In cinema, the magic of storytelling begins long before the cameras start rolling. This year's Oscar picks feature a variety of original screenplays and adaptations of existing works. Let's explore who wrote the Best Picture nominees and where their ideas came from. Let's start with the stories adapted from books. A Complete Unknown is a biopic that follows the early career of Bob Dylan, focusing on his rise to fame in the folk music scene of the early 1960s. It chronicles Dylan's journey from his arrival in New York to meet his hero Woody Guthrie to his controversial decision to go electric at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival. The screenplay was written by James Mangold and Jay Cox, drawing inspiration from Elijah Wald's 2015 book, Dylan Goes Electric. Mangold wanted to avoid typical biopic tropes, focusing instead on Dylan's impact through the eyes of those around him.
As much as it's a biographical tale, I think there's kind of universal questions about genius and what is it? And do the people who have it deserve it? And do the people who don't have it, should they be resentful or envious or covet or protect?
In coming up with that approach, Mangold was inspired by the film Amadeus, which examined the effect of Mozart's genius on those in his orbit. Conclave is a political thriller. Following the death of a pope, a conclave, a gathering of cardinals, is organized to elect his successor. Best Actor nominee Ralph Fiennes' task in the film is to investigate secrets and possible scandals among the main candidates. Conclave is based on a 2016 novel by Robert Harris, who was inspired to write it while watching the Conclave of 2013.
And I realized actually it would make a great novel because although God is supposed to move the cardinal electors to choose the Pope, there's also quite a lot of politics as well in between meetings in the Sistine Chapel.
For accuracy, he consulted with a prominent cardinal, who himself had been a consideration for Pope. Dune Part 2 continues the epic saga of Paul Atreides, picking up where the first film left off. Paul, now allied with the Fremen, navigates the treacherous political landscape of Arrakis, while grappling with his destiny as their prophesied Messiah, all set against the backdrop of a vast, meticulously crafted science fiction universe. Dune Part 2 is an adaptation of the second half of Frank Herbert's 1965 novel, Dune.
I write science fiction for people who don't read science fiction. I think it first has to be entertaining, because if it's not entertaining, nobody's going to read it.
Screenplay co-writer and director Denis Villeneuve aimed to remain faithful to the source material while bringing his own cinematic vision to the story. Nickel Boys tells the story of Elwood, a young black boy in 1960s Florida. A case of mistaken identity sends him to Nickel Academy, a reform school. Elwood and his friend Turner endure horrific physical and psychological abuse behind the school's facade. Nickel Boys is an adaptation of Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name. The film stays pretty faithful to the source material, which was inspired by real-life accounts of the Dozier School for Boys in Marianna, Florida, which operated for over a century and became notorious for its abuse. Why did Whitehead choose to fictionalize the story instead of write an exposé?
You pick the right tool for the job, and sometimes fantasy is a way to open up a story and convey a universal truth, and sometimes realism. And I grew up reading comic books and science fiction and Stephen King, and so fantasy has always been part of my toolkit.
The director, Ramel Ross, chose to film the story through Elwood's eyes to immerse the audience in his experience and convey the claustrophobia and helplessness of his situation. I'm Still Here follows the true story of Eunice Paiva, a woman in 1970s Brazil whose husband, Roberto, is taken away by the military dictatorship. Left with no answers and little support, Eunice embarks on a relentless, years-long quest to uncover the truth about her husband's disappearance. Her journey forces her to confront bureaucratic obstacles and the growing possibility that her husband may no longer be alive. I'm Still Here is an adaptation of Marcelo Rubens Paiva's memoir, Ainda, Estou, Aqui, with the screenplay written by Murilo Hauser and Heitor Orega. During the filming, director Walter Salles collaborated extensively with Eunice's son, affording the film particular authenticity.
He was, during the whole process, a very close collaborator, and at the same time he could see it from within and from a distance, which is very rare. And it's really it takes a completely free-spirited a mind to be able to do that, and a generosity as well,
The filmmakers chose to portray Eunice's journey with a sense of quiet determination, avoiding sensationalism and focusing on the emotional weight of her search. Wicked is a fantastical musical that reimagines the origin story of the Witches of Oz, exploring the unlikely friendship between Elphaba, the misunderstood girl with green skin, and Glinda, the popular and ambitious blonde. Set before the events of The Wizard of Oz, the film explores the social dynamics of Oz, challenging the traditional narrative of who's good and who's bad. Wicked is, of course, an adaptation of the blockbuster Broadway musical, which itself was based on Gregory Maguire's 1995 novel, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which he wrote to explore his own understanding of good versus evil.
What really do I mean when I say somebody is bad, somebody is wicked? I wasn't really sure. Was I talking about a biological construct or a psychological aberration? Was I talking about the presence of Satan in a post-deitistical world? What did I mean? I didn't know. So I thought, well, I'm pretty stupid, but I'm a good writer, so I'll have to write a story about evil in order to find out what I think about it now that I'm halfway through my life.
Maguire is known for his literary reimaginings of classic stories. Looking now at totally original screenplays. Anora is a romantic comedy written and directed by Sean Baker, perhaps best known for 2017's The Florida Project. Anora focuses on an exotic dancer who marries the son of a Russian oligarch against his family's will. They go to great pains to get the marriage annulled. Baker says his original screenplay was inspired by news of a Russian-American newlywed who was kidnapped, as well as wedding videos he himself used to edit in his early filmmaking days.
In many ways, I feel art and film can bring people together and humanize people. On our set, we had Russians working with Ukrainians, working with Armenians, working with Americans, all together as artists, trying to create something that was about love and about universal themes. And I think that's what's important. That's what should be focused on.
Actress Mikey Madison had to learn Russian to play the role of Anora. Earning 10 nominations in Oscar categories is The Brutalist. Golden Globe and Academy Award winner Adrian Brody plays a Holocaust survivor who seeks the American dream. He's an architect with a very demanding client. The 3.5-hour film was shown with a 15-minute intermission. Screenwriters Mona Fastvold and actor-director Brady Corbet are both fans of brutalism, an architectural style focusing on bluntness and strength, a style which was not always popular with critics. The screenwriters considered it a fitting allegory for the immigrant experience of the 1940s.
We always knew what we wanted it to represent, and that we wanted it to be a way for him to heal, in a way, and to process his trauma. And looking at those images, as well as brutalist architecture, to sort of bring in his trauma and what he's processing through that final building.
so for us, we felt that it was very important for the film to represent architecture through the film's titles, the score, and the way that the film was constructed.
Emilia Perez is a musical crime comedy about a powerful Mexican cartel boss who wants to retire. He hires an attorney to fake his death and reappear as Emilia Perez, allowing him to leave his violent past behind and start a new life. Emilia Perez is an original screenplay written and directed by Jacques Audiard. The screenplay wasn't based on a book, but Audiard came up with the idea after reading a novel with a similar premise.
It was so interesting, and I'm turning the pages, chapter after chapter, and he doesn't develop this character at all. Nothing happens to him, so I call the author and I say to him, "Do you have anything planned for this character?" And at first, he didn't even know who I was talking about, and then he told me, "No, I don't have anything planned." So I took the idea from him, and that was the start.
The Substance presents a darkly satirical and body horror-infused narrative centered on a revolutionary new wellness drug. This drug allows users to create a younger, idealized version of themselves, effectively splitting their consciousness between two bodies. However, the catch is that users can only inhabit their younger selves for a week at a time, and strict rules must be followed to avoid catastrophic consequences. The Substance is an original screenplay written and directed by Coralie Fargit. Her inspiration stems from her views of the pressures surrounding beauty and aging, particularly for women in the entertainment industry. She uses the extreme premise of the drug to satirize the lengths people will go to in pursuit of an unattainable ideal.
Everything that I felt inside and that I think we are used to hide, behind the pearly smiles, I wanted it to let go and to kind of splatter the world with it, saying, yes, this is the reality of it. This is what's happening. This is what the world is doing to us. And the movie needed to be at the level of that. That was kind of the, for me to be faithful to what I had written and why I had written it. I needed it to be like with that much violence and excess on screen.
So, 4 original screenplays and 6 adapted from books, all demonstrating the power of storytelling to transport, challenge, and inspire us. I hope this helps you find a little inspiration for your next creative project. Thanks for watching, and see you at the movies.